Welcome to Crimes Beyond Borders, where we'll bring you the most thrilling true crime stories every single day. If you're fascinated by mystery, intrigue, and the darker side of human nature, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel the most shocking and perplexing criminal cases from around the world. The story is about to begin after this intro.
From city streets to far-off lands, mystery slipping through our hands. Crimes beyond borders they speak, voices strong but words are meek. Every story leaves a mark, whispers softly in the dark.
Our stories at first are made for ourselves, to comfort us, to help us sleep, and to learn. Along the way, they become a part of our journey, teaching us English and fueling our passion for true crime. So, listen carefully, and if you're about to sleep, close your eyes. Let's begin. Here's a detailed true crime story set in Africa that revolves around greed, witchcraft, and bizarre ritual practices, illustrating how cultural beliefs and extreme superstition can lead to tragic and bizarre crimes. This story is about the Nyanga Witch Killings in Zimbabwe, a chilling series of murders fueled by greed, superstition, and the exploitation of vulnerable people. It involves claims of witchcraft, human sacrifice, and ritual killings, and reveals the dark side of cultural beliefs in traditional magic and its dangerous intersection with greed. The Nyanga Witch Killings: Witchcraft, Greed, and Human Sacrifice in Zimbabwe. In the early 2000s, the serene mountain town of Nyanga in eastern Zimbabwe became the epicenter of a terrifying series of murders that shocked the country. Nestled in the rolling highlands, Nyanga was known for its mist-covered peaks, scenic beauty, and deep-rooted cultural traditions. However, beneath its peaceful exterior lay a dark world of witchcraft, ritual killings, and human sacrifice, driven by greed and the belief in magic to acquire wealth and power. The Nyanga Witch Killings involved the brutal murders of multiple victims, many of them children, who were killed in cold blood to fulfill ritualistic purposes. Their body parts were harvested and sold for use in witchcraft rituals, which were believed to grant prosperity and supernatural powers to those willing to pay for such macabre services. This series of killings highlights the dangerous intersection of ancient beliefs and the modern pursuit of wealth and success. The Nyanga region had long been a place where belief in witchcraft was pervasive, and where traditional healers, or Nangas, held immense power over people's lives. But this belief system was taken to terrifying extremes when certain unscrupulous Nangas began exploiting it for profit, fueling a wave of ritual murders that shook the community to its core. The roots of the belief in witchcraft and ritual sacrifice. To understand the Nyanga Witch Killings, it's essential to delve into the cultural context of Zimbabwe, where belief in witchcraft and the powers of traditional healers has existed for centuries. In many rural areas of the country, despite the spread of modern religions, people still believe that supernatural forces can be harnessed to influence real-world outcomes. Nangas, or traditional healers, consulted for everything from healing illnesses to solving personal problems, and they are regarded as powerful intermediaries between the human world and the spiritual realm. However, among these healers, there exists a dark side. Certain rogue Nangas, driven by greed, offer muthi, traditional medicine that is believed to bring wealth and success. The most potent form of muthi is thought to come from human body parts, especially those taken from children, who are believed to possess pure and powerful life energy. These beliefs have led to numerous cases of ritual killings across Africa, where victims, often children, are murdered and mutilated for their body parts, which are sold to individuals seeking supernatural assistance to gain wealth or power. In the early 2000s, Nyanga became a hotbed for such ritual killings, with local Nangas at the center of a terrifying and lucrative trade in human body parts. Wealthy businessmen, politicians, and even ordinary people, desperate for success, are willing to pay vast sums of money for human muthi. This dark underworld of witchcraft and sacrifice thrived under the cover of rural secrecy. But the horrifying details of the killings would soon come to light. The start of the killings, the case of Tapua. The Nyanga Witch Killings first came to national attention in 2001 when the body of Tapua Makore, a 6-year-old boy, was found mutilated in a gruesome ritual killing. Tapua had disappeared from his village while playing with friends, and a frantic search ensued. Days later, his headless body was discovered in a shallow grave, missing several body parts, including his hands and heart. The news of Tapua's murder sent shockwaves through the community. Ritual killings had long been rumored, but this was the first time that such a case had been so blatantly exposed. The discovery of his mutilated body confirmed what many had feared, that certain Nangas were using human sacrifices as part of their rituals and selling body parts to individuals seeking magical powers or wealth. The police investigation quickly zeroed in on several suspects, including Tapua's own uncle, who was believed to have sold the boy to a local Nanga in exchange for a large sum of money. Under interrogation, the uncle confessed to his involvement in the murder, revealing that the boy's body parts had been taken for use in a ritual designed to bring prosperity to a local businessman. This confession marked the beginning of a broader investigation into the dark world of ritual killings in Nyanga. The spread of the ritual killings. Fear grips Nyanga. As the investigation into Tapua's murder deepened, authorities uncovered a network of traditional healers, businessmen, and even politicians who were involved in the illegal trade of human body parts. The revelations sparked a wave of fear and panic throughout Nyanga and surrounding areas, as people realized that children were being targeted for ritual killings. Over the next few years, the bodies of more victims were discovered, each bearing the telltale signs of ritualistic mutilation. In one particularly gruesome case, the dismembered body of a 9-year-old girl was found in a river, her internal organs missing. Like Tapua, she had been sacrificed for her body parts, which were believed to have magical properties. The murders followed a horrifying pattern. Children would go missing, only for their bodies to be found days or weeks later, often buried in shallow graves or dumped in rivers. The killers would remove specific body parts, such as the heart, liver, or genitals, which were believed to be the most potent for use in rituals aimed at bringing wealth, success, or protection. The involvement of Nangas in the killings highlighted how deeply ingrained these beliefs were in the local culture. While many traditional healers operated within the law, there were those who exploited people's desperation and belief in magic to carry out heinous crimes. As the body count rose, it became clear that these ritual killings were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, deeply disturbing phenomenon. The role of Nangas, the dark side of traditional healing. As more suspects were arrested, investigators began to uncover the full extent of the Muthi trade in Nyanga. Rogue Nangas, masquerading as legitimate healers, were at the center of the killings. These Nangas offered clients powerful potions and spells made from human remains, promising that these rituals would bring them riches, business success, or even political power. In exchange for large sums of money, these traditional healers provided their clients with human body parts harvested from the victims they killed. The body parts were believed to enhance the potency of the Muthi, and some Nangas even claimed that the sacrifice of a human being could appease ancestral spirits or dark forces, ensuring good fortune for the individual who ordered the ritual. One of the most notorious Nangas involved in the killings was Sekuru Dambudzo, a feared and respected figure in Nyanga who claimed to have supernatural powers. Dambudzo had a reputation for providing Muthi that guaranteed success, and he was frequently consulted by wealthy businessmen and politicians. His services came at a high price, often requiring human sacrifices. Dambudzo and his accomplices would instruct clients to bring them a child, promising that the Muthi created from the child's body parts would ensure prosperity. Once the victim was delivered, the child would be killed, and the body parts would be harvested and used in elaborate rituals. The remains were sometimes buried near sacred sites or rivers to complete the ritual. As authorities continued their investigation, they arrested Dambudzo and several other Nyangas involved in the killings. During interrogations, the healers admitted to their crimes, claiming that they were simply fulfilling the demands of their clients, wealthy individuals who wanted quick success and were willing to pay any price for it, even if that price was human life. The motivations: greed, desperation, and belief in magic. The motivations behind the Nyanga witch killings were rooted in a dangerous combination of greed, desperation, and deeply ingrained belief in magic. For the Nyangas, the trade in human body parts was a highly profitable business. Clients would pay vast sums for muthi made from human remains, believing that the magic would bring them wealth, power, or protection. The more potent the muthi, the higher the price, and nothing was considered more powerful than muthi made from a human sacrifice. For the clients, many of whom were businessmen, politicians, or traditional leaders, the killings represented a twisted path to success. These individuals were often desperate for financial or political gain and believed that human muthi was the fastest way to achieve their goals. The use of muthi was not limited to the poor or uneducated. Many of those who participated in these rituals were highly influential figures in Zimbabwean society. The widespread belief in witchcraft and the power of Nyangas made it easier for these crimes to go undetected for so long. In rural areas like Nyanga, people were often reluctant to report suspicious activity or challenge the authority of traditional healers, who were seen as powerful figures capable of inflicting curses or harm. As a result, many of the killings went unreported, with families either too afraid or too ashamed to come forward. The investigation and arrests, breaking the silence. The unraveling of the Nyanga witch killings was a painstaking process for the authorities, who had to contend not only with the brutality of the crimes, but also with the pervasive fear and superstition that surrounded the case. Initially, locals were reluctant to come forward with information, fearing retribution from both the rogue Nyangas and the influential clients who had sought out their dark services. Many believed that the traditional healers wielded mystical powers capable of bringing about sickness, misfortune, or death if they were angered. As the investigation into Tapiwa Makore's murder and other cases gained momentum, law enforcement officials became more determined to expose the full extent of the ritual killings. The involvement of high-ranking businessmen and politicians made the case politically sensitive, and it became clear that some individuals were using their wealth and power to evade scrutiny. After the arrests of several Nyangas, including the notorious Sekuru Dambudzo, law enforcement was able to break through the wall of silence that had previously protected the killers. During their interrogations, Dambudzo and his associates provided chilling details about the rituals they had performed and the clients who had ordered the killings. These confessions opened a floodgate of information, allowing the police to connect the dots between a series of previously unsolved disappearances and murders. The authorities also began investigating a web of corruption that had allowed the ritual killings to continue for so long without detection. Several police officers and local officials were found to have accepted bribes from Nyangas and wealthy clients, allowing them to cover up their crimes or avoid prosecution. This corruption scandal rocked the local government and law enforcement agencies, leading to the dismissal and prosecution of several individuals involved in obstructing justice. One of the most significant breakthroughs in the case came when a former client of Sekuru Dambudzo, a local businessman named Pekazitha Moyo, agreed to cooperate with the police in exchange for leniency. Moyo admitted that he had paid Dambudzo to perform a ritual using human body parts, hoping that it would bring him wealth in his struggling business. His testimony implicated several other prominent individuals who had sought similar services from the Nyangas, many of whom were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and human trafficking. The trial, Justice for the Victims. The trial of the Nyanga witch killings became one of the most sensational and controversial cases in Zimbabwe's history. It exposed the dark underbelly of greed, corruption, and the exploitation of cultural beliefs in witchcraft, shocking not only the local community, but the entire nation. The trial brought to light the tragic fates of the victims, many of whom were children, and the horrific ways in which their lives had been cut short for the sake of greed and superstition. During the trial, gruesome details emerged about how the victims had been abducted, murdered, and dismembered. Families of the victims testified about the trauma they had endured, not only from losing their loved ones, but also from the knowledge that their bodies had been desecrated for ritual purposes. Many of the victims' remains had been irreparably mutilated, leaving families unable to properly bury their children according to traditional customs. The prosecution built a strong case against the Nyangas and their wealthy clients, presenting forensic evidence, confessions, and testimonies from witnesses. In a rare move, the court allowed some of the Nyangas to demonstrate the specific rituals they had performed using body parts, highlighting the elaborate and disturbing nature of the killings. Their testimonies and reenactments revealed the extent to which these practices were normalized in certain circles, and how deeply entrenched the belief in the power of Muthi was. Sekuru Dambudzo, who had orchestrated many of the killings, was one of the central figures in the trial. He remained unrepentant throughout the proceedings, insisting that he had simply provided a service to those who believed in his powers. Dambudzo's indifference to the suffering of his victims shocked the courtroom, and his apparent lack of remorse only fueled public outrage. In 2003, after months of testimony and deliberation, the court found Sekuru Dambudzo and several of his accomplices guilty of multiple counts of murder, human trafficking, and desecration of corpses. The presiding judge condemned their actions as a perversion of cultural beliefs and an unforgivable exploitation of the vulnerable. Dambudzo and 3 other Nyangas were sentenced to life imprisonment, while several clients, businessmen, and politicians received sentences ranging from 20 years to life for their roles in facilitating the killings. For the families of the victims, the convictions provided some measure of justice, but the emotional scars remained. Many struggled with the horror of knowing that their loved ones had been killed for ritual purposes, a grotesque distortion of traditional beliefs that had been passed down through generations. The case also reignited a national conversation about the role of traditional healers in society and the need for greater regulation of their practices to prevent future abuses. The aftermath: a community in shock. The Nyanga Witch Killings left an indelible mark on the community, where the fear of witchcraft and ritual killings persisted long after the trial. The revelations about the extent of the Muthi trade and the involvement of respected community figures in the killings shook public trust in local authorities and traditional healers. Many people in Nyanga and across Zimbabwe began to question the practices of Nyangas and the belief in witchcraft, particularly when it was used as a tool for greed and exploitation. In response to the killings, the Zimbabwean government passed stricter laws regulating traditional healing practices, requiring Nyangas to be registered and subject to oversight. However, these measures were met with resistance from some communities, where Nyangas were still seen as essential spiritual figures with deep connections to the ancestors. In the years following the trial, Zimbabwean authorities launched a public awareness campaign to educate people about the dangers of ritual killings and to encourage them to report any suspicious activity involving traditional healers. Despite these efforts, the fear of witchcraft remained pervasive in many rural areas, and sporadic reports of ritual killings continued to surface, though none on the scale of the Nyanga case. The cultural conflict: tradition versus modernity. The Nyanga witch killings also highlighted the cultural conflict between traditional beliefs in witchcraft and the modern legal and moral framework that condemns such practices. In Zimbabwe, as in many parts of Africa, belief in magic and spiritual healing is deeply embedded in society. For centuries, Nyangas have been regarded as healers, counselors, and spiritual leaders, playing an important role in both physical and emotional well-being. However, the rise of rogue Nyangas, who exploited these beliefs for financial gain and engaged in criminal activities like human sacrifice, exposed the darker side of traditional healing. The trial and subsequent fallout from the Nyanga killings forced many to confront the ethical dilemmas surrounding the use of Muthi and the role of Nyangas in modern society. At the heart of the conflict was a fundamental question. Where should the line be drawn between respecting cultural traditions and protecting human life? While many Zimbabweans defended the role of Nyangas in providing legitimate healing services, the Nyanga Witch Killings revealed the potential for abuse and exploitation when traditional beliefs are twisted for personal gain. Conclusion: a legacy of horror and change. The Nyanga Witch Killings stand as one of the most horrifying examples of the consequences of unchecked superstition, greed, and exploitation. The deaths of innocent children, mutilated for the sake of wealth and power, left a community in mourning and a nation in shock. The case forced Zimbabwean society to confront the darker aspects of its belief in witchcraft and muthi, while also exposing the corruption that had allowed these crimes to go undetected for so long. While the trial and convictions brought some measure of justice, the scars of the killings remained, both for the families of the victims and for the country as a whole. The story of Nyanga is a chilling reminder of the dangers that can arise when cultural beliefs are manipulated for selfish purposes, and the devastating consequences when human life is sacrificed in pursuit of material wealth. For many, the Nyanga Witch Killings serve as a cautionary tale, a grim warning about the potential for belief in the supernatural to lead to real-world horrors when exploited by the unscrupulous. It is a story of tragedy, but also one of reckoning, as Zimbabwe continues to grapple with the tension between tradition and modernity, and the need to safeguard the most vulnerable from those who would use ancient beliefs for criminal purposes. The story has come to an end, but stay relaxed. If you feel yourself drifting off to sleep, just let the video play and enjoy the soothing music in the background. Let it guide you gently into rest. We'll be here, bringing you more stories every night. Sleep well, and see you tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Streets, dark shadows creep, footsteps vanish down alleys deep. Silent whispers, cities asleep, mystery in the air it seeps. Flickering lamps dimly glow, secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light truth begins to show, unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight, lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight, moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking clocks, relentless sound, time slips when danger's around. In the shadows, lost and found, haunting silence so profound. Flickering lamps dimly glow, secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light truth begins to show, unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight, lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight, moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking cloisters on crumbling walls, telling tales of forbidden calls. Into the night, someone falls down the alley.